The Senator Honourable Murray Watt, the Minister for Agriculture, Forestries and Fisheries. Thank you so much for your time today at the IFCBAA Conference on the Gold Coast. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Natalie. It's really good to be here, and congratulations to IFCBAA for putting on this event. As I said inside, we recognise as a government the really important role that customs brokers and others play in our trade system. So it was my pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much for your time. Can I ask you a couple of questions? What will be the main effects from last week's budget and the announcements on sustainability for the industry?
Yeah, so I guess what's most relevant in the budget for your industry from the agriculture portfolio is the biosecurity funding that we put in place. Obviously, brokers like yourselves play a really important role in facilitating imports in particular, and our biosecurity clearances do need to be done, but I know they cause frustration for people at times. So what we've done in last week's budget is two big things. Massively increased funding for biosecurity, so over $1 billion in extra funding for biosecurity in the federal budget, and importantly putting that on a sustainable permanent footing forever, rather than sort of stopgap funding, which is what we've seen in the past. And we've also come up with what we think is a fair way of sharing the cost. So what we've said is that it's only right that taxpayers contribute more through their government, because we all benefit from biosecurity, but also we need to be able to charge risk creators, like people who are importing things or travellers, to pay their fair share. And we've also asked farmers and producers to pay a little bit towards the system as well. So hopefully we've come up with the right way of splitting that cost, so that we all pay a bit of a share, but importantly, as I say, a really big funding injection in biosecurity going forward.
Thank you very much. I know that it's been a pet for some of us freight forwarders over the last 18 months, and really important to really get on the front foot, and we appreciate the funding. What do you think the main risks for biosecurity are for Australia?
Well, unfortunately, they're growing by the day. As I said inside, obviously the foot and mouth disease epidemic that we saw in Indonesia last year, and unfortunately is still there and will be for a while, was a big wake-up call, I think, for us, all Australians, about the biosecurity risks that we face. But that's just the beginning of the list. So there's also lumpy skin disease, which affects the cattle industry in Indonesia and a number of other countries, all sorts of plant diseases that are a risk, and then there's things like myrtle rust, which aren't sort of poisonous to human health or anything like that, but they're devastating for our trees and other vegetation. So I think the fact that we do have much more trade going on internationally, much more international trade and travel does, and even things like online shopping increasing, are all contributing to a higher risk environment, and that's why we need to do more. And I should mention, I guess, that with that extra funding that we've put in the budget, we are hoping to address some of the concerns of freight forwarders. As I say, I'm aware of the frustration about some of the cargo clearance timeframes, and that does get in the way of free and open trade. And what I'm hoping to do with some investments in digitising some of our processes is that will make the process much more efficient for freight forwarders, and will also free up biosecurity officers to do more inspections and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Can I ask one question? There's a lot of rumours about maybe an import levy or a container levy that's been going around the industry. What's your take on that, and what's government looking at doing?
Yeah, there has been a lot of talk about that, and that is something that we are looking at, whether it be an import levy or container levy. What we've decided to do, I guess, is do this in stages. So what we've been able to do in this budget is get that extra taxpayer funding, ask producers to pay a little bit more. We are going to be putting up FIDs and things like that through cost recovery, because the reality is they haven't kept pace with the increase in biosecurity costs. But the idea of introducing a container levy or import levy is a bit of a complicated one. There are trade law issues that we would need to resolve. Even talking with your representatives this morning, there's issues around how it would be collected. And we just want to do that work properly, rather than running out half-cocked saying we're going to do something only to have to back off a few months later. I think people remember that happened a couple of years ago and it didn't turn out that well. I'm one of those guys who'd actually like to do the work properly first before we make a decision, and we'll be obviously consulting with your industry and other people with an interest in this in the months ahead.
Yeah, I know Scott and Adam will be very interested in that. I know that as freight forwarders, we really put a heavy emphasis on biosecurity. It's really essential that we keep Australia's flora and fauna protected. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Adam, over to you. Why is biosecurity so important?
Thanks, Natalie, and thanks, Minister, for attending. Biosecurity is exceptionally important to this country, and look, to have Minister Watt turn up today, it's very rewarding for our industry. Our industry lives and breathes biosecurity every day. We wake up every day, we're answering community protection questions about quarantine and looking out for various different risks that are associated with cargo. And those risks, as Minister Watt said, are only increasing. I mean, we've had the BMSB season, which has affected our car industry quite substantially. We've had vessels that are late, big delays within cargo, but the risks are just too great to facilitate that cargo as quick as we'd like. We're dealing with Capra beetle that's coming out of the Middle East and European regions. So our industry are dealing with more and more risks every day, and they're growing. So we live and breathe these policies every day and act within these policies. So it's very important for us as a country, and to have Minister Watt turn up and address our delegation is very rewarding, because sometimes you can get your head down in this work and you think, why am I doing this for? But this just reinforces how important the Minister's Department believes that our industry is. So it's great that they turn up. And yeah, as a country, I mean, Australia's agricultural industry is massive, and we're one of the few countries in the world that are free from, very harmful pests and diseases. So we'd like to keep it that way. We all operate with compliance in our industry, and we want to do the right thing for our country. So thank you.
Thank you. I might just ask Scott a few question as well. Scott, why is it so important to have Murray here, and what emphasis on the industry do you think is going to be for the future?
Well, look, on behalf of IFFCBAA and Natalie, it's fantastic to have Minister Watt here today, because he represents the department that looks after biosecurity, agriculture, the protection of Australia's environment on imported sort of threats of risks of pests and that sort of thing. So Australia is a large island, so we've got to support as an industry what government, work with government, particularly with DAF as we know it, which is the Minister's department that comes under his wing. So it's very important that our members work with the department through ourselves. There's constant challenges, as Adam mentioned, in terms of pests. We're now calling them hitchhiker pests, and they're multiple. There's a number of them that come from different countries, and that can depend on the season. There's countries that are identified at high risk at different times. So these sort of things are very easily captured within, particularly with containerised cargo, and it's important that the appropriate treatments and evidence of that, quite often overseas, are facilitated. Our members assist the department in terms of that compliance, and in turn our members are talking to their import customers to try and make sure that's adhered to. So, as I said before, Australia is a very large island. We've got to assist government in really trying to protect that from all these potential biosecurity risks.
Well, thank you very much, Adam, Honourable Senator Murray Watt, and Scott, for your time. And it's very important we keep the industry safe, and we're so lucky to have you here on the Gold Coast.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.